Thanks for joining us this week on the Simulation Pulse Live. Appreciate it. Hope everybody's week is going well. You're all welcome to chime in if you'd like. We don't keep this kind of informal. Um, cool. Well, I guess in keeping with the themes of the Pulse Live that we've been doing, we talked a lot about content in our very first episode. We talked about tools in our last session. And this week, the whole week has been about, okay, so you've got content and tools, so what? What do you do with them? And so how do you actually make this happen? Traditional, it's the traditional. So is that Stephen or traditional meaning Stefan?
Yeah, is it a
Stephen,
pronounce
got it. Okay. Yeah.
E or the P?
Yeah. Excellent. Well, welcome. Appreciate you. Sean's here. Excellent. I've got a cough. I'm still recovering from a cold, but it's the worst that it like sneaks up on me right in the middle of sentences. So I apologize in advance if I've got a little cough this time around. But yeah, so how do you put this content in all these tools to use? And really, a couple of key aspects of that are, basically what you all get with a lab in Acadicus. We still get a lot of questions from people about, okay, so we want to run scenarios, we want to start using Acadicus. What do we do? What do we need to do that? Um, Getting a lab in Acadicus is the main way to do that. It's a subscription model. You get access to your own library of scenes and 3D recordings, anything you want to create, as well as access to the whole shared content library, all the patients, all the environments, all the scenario templates, and then all the tools. All of that comes with your lab. And the only limitation to a lab is that you can only use it to run one concurrent simulation. So if you've got more than one program, Madison College, Bill's got lots of different programs using it. They have lots of different labs. There we go. Excuse me. So they've got, nursing programs, paramedic programs. That's the only problem, is that if you've got two different programs that want to use it at exactly the same time, you would need two labs in that case. That's kind of how a lab works, but there's no charge per user, no charge per simulation or per anything else. It's just one all-inclusive lab. You can run as many simulations as there in there as you'd like, as long as they're not happening multiple simulations concurrently at one time. So, Rick, is there anything about, or Bill, anything about labs that you guys want to add that just kind of like to clarify? I feel like it's a question we get enough that it's worth kind of going over.
I just go back to thinking about it like my sim lab, right? So if I've got a mannequin in a room, it's the same thing. I can't put two simulations going on in there at the same time unless I want them to hear each other. I mean, we could have two patients, right? So like, be it EMS, be it nursing. If you had a room where you had two patients, I'm thinking like the birthing mannequin, John, like so we have we have the birth going on, right? And then the baby is there. So now you've got two patients. So you've got the mom that you're still working with, and then you've got the baby. So that kind of thing, I think of it like that, but I just think of it exactly the same as my simulation labs that, I have at the college. If I am running a sim in there, that area is dedicated for that simulation. The nice thing about it, so my simulation lab, when I go and I run a simulation with my students and they do all this stuff, then we got to like put everything back together. We got to clean it all up. We got to bring it all back out. We got to make sure that the bags are all, reorganized and back to the way they're supposed to be. And then we got to, get the mannequin, and maybe they did some things, maybe there was some moulage on it that I want different, whatever it may be. I have to go through all of that. So I have to budget that time between my simulations. Whereas with this, I don't. I just I just go in and reset the scene, and we're off and running again, and then the next set of students can come in. So I just think of it like my simulation lab that I use with my mannequins. It's really kind of the same idea.
That makes a lot of sense. So you get a passcode to that lab, and that's kind of your ID. Kind of like joining a Zoom call. Like there's an ID that you use to get into your lab. And then once you're in there, you've got all the different scenes, and like Bill said, you can just click and open them or reload or reset. Pretty easy. I'll actually open up Acadicus and just kind of show that what that menu looks like. And I want to make a note too. We can make this Simulation Pulse live about anything anybody wants to talk about. We've got a few guests here, people that are joining in, and feel free to jump into the QA channel if you want to be a speak as well. Like we can add you to the panel. This is really informal and we can do whatever we want with this time. So if there's something you're just like, hey, I really wish I could look at whatever, environment or whatever you want to look at, we can make it happen. So we can do whatever we want. I'm sharing my screen here. I'm going to go into, we have a new Commons in the works. So
Yeah,
here's,
John, Sean gave me a sneak peek of that today, and I was in it, and I was really blown away.
isn't it cool? I'm
It's
super excited.
very cool. I can't wait for it to get released.
Absolutely. So this is where you would enter a private lab ID, and then we're going to join this private lab. We're going to go right into the new commons and check it out. This is not publicly available yet, but will be shortly, probably sometime next week or the week after. Um, but when you land, we've got a whole new environment,
There's
and
so many things I want to call out here, John, too, for the folks that are sharing this with us. That, for instance, what you're seeing here in front of you are these videos. You can incorporate videos into your VR training. Right? If you have content like this, short videos, you can actually bring that into the learning environment in your room and share that during a learning experience. And it's one of the more
absolutely.
features that we have is that this capability to bring video content, graphic content, or documents into these settings are all about the customization. So we really encourage our community to meet these experiences there. Right? That's why our stock and trade isn't giving you a lot of pre-made content. It's giving you templates to start with. Then you build it. Bill builds his scenarios and scenes. So his learning style and content he's looking to convey to his team, and the best way that his students learn. We don't limit any of it.
Yep, absolutely. This environment actually is one of the environments we built for Madison College way back when we first started brainstorming. We were like, what would a perfect world look like? And the Madison College campus is up by the airport in Madison, Wisconsin. And I said, it'd be like a huge hangar, and we'd have this wide open space so that people could go into VR headsets. I was imagining like room scale VR becoming a bigger part of what we do. And it's still in the cards. You never know, but they wanted us to dream big, and we did. And it's a whole dedicated hangar to their XR lab. So that's the environment that we're using for the commons.
I'm
So we
still
gotta,
hoping we get to that, John.
yeah, I can't
Yeah,
wait. It's gonna
yeah,
happen. It's gonna happen. So
yeah.
on any of these videos, if you just hover over, you can like unmute. Hey, I know that guy.
Ah, it's
You can
familiar.
unmute the videos, and then we've got like a little bit more information about each of the different aspects of Acadicus. So if you really want to come in here and just kind of explore and get to know what we all have, I'm gonna go faster through here. But Sean's already made all the changes we talked about yesterday. Really looking good. Great community of practice, pricing. But here's my favorite part. Check this out. All the new scenarios that we've got for OpenRN, a whole bunch of new healthcare scenarios. These are all in here now. So we can go check these out. The birthing simulator for EMS, the birthing for nursing. The new MCI scene that Bill and I just built last week is in here now. So we can check that out. And we've got a bunch more. These are not all the OpenRN scenarios, but we can go into any of these OpenRN scenarios from here. And then this little room over here is going to be our space for Simulation Pulse Live. So we're going to start our episodes from here from now on. We can meet in here and we'll have some videos on the walls and featured guests or whatever we're doing on Pulse Live. We'll have a little dedicated space to it.
This just really blew me away when I saw it. I mean, great job, Sean, putting this together.
Yeah, outstanding job, Sean. This is great. And this is even our interim commons. This isn't even really our new commons. Basically, we were brainstorming a bunch of things we're going to be doing with, I don't know how much we want to get into here, but like we got a lot of changes coming to the way that we're delivering Acadicus. And especially when we're rolling out, as we're rolling out campus, we're going to be rolling out a new pavilion specific for content exploration, new visitor pavilion. So we're working on that, but this is sort of an interim version. But I actually like the interim version so much that I don't know. I think we could just kind of use this one for a while.
Yeah,
Be pretty
actually,
good.
I really like it as well. Not just because, you know, all my videos are here, um, but
It's the Bill
the
show.
yeah. But the other thing is that you know, it's got a really great, like a real sleek look to it. And then it gives you good information too. The open RN scenarios, we use Bjorn McClellan quite a bit. He's the congestive heart failure patient that needs nitroglycerin administration. We use this one a lot. And I really like it, especially for the first year nursing students. You know, they're trying to just kind of figure out the basic scenario here. And what's cool about this is that, like, so the nursing students will come or I'm sorry, the nursing faculty will come to me and say, hey, we want to use this scenario. Can we set up this scenario? Now, these are already pre-made scenarios. So this is Bjorn, he's already pre-made. Um, but then, you know, they had other scenarios that they were already using in their sim labs, and they just wanted to create them within Acadicus. So we do that. But Bjorn here, what I really like about this is it's using the critical thinking of deciding whether or not you want to give the patient their patch nitro, right? So their transdermal, or whether or not you want to give them the sublingual nitro, and sort of what the do's and don'ts and the benefits are of it. So it really focuses a lot on the assessment and really talking to Bjorn and getting to understand him. I act as Bjorn for our nursing students, and I actually start to get a little upset because Bjorn's kind of confused because he's new to this care facility, and he really doesn't understand. And like his wife has been taking care of most of the stuff, and so he's sort of expecting her to be there and take care of things. One of the students came up with a really great way to get through to Bjorn. One I actually kind of didn't expect. John, if you turn and look over the table to the right there,
Mm-hmm.
and I think this is one of the reasons we placed this in here. There's a rosary laying on the table, and she utilized the rosary and his religion as a way to sort of help him understand what was going on. It was really fascinating the way that the nursing student got through to him. I think she was Catholic as well, so she knew sort of the ins and outs. But it was really interesting that you know, she got to know the patient really well, and I was really impressed by that. But so I do both. I do it just like John's doing it here, where I'm in viewer mode. So I do this, and then I also act as Bjorn, and it's really easy, you know, because I'm used to using regular regular simulation mannequins, and the simulation manager here is even a little bit more toned down, a little easier to use because it fits with that specific scenario. So there's a lot of things you don't necessarily have to do, right? You don't have to worry about like changing his lung sounds to wheezes and stuff like that. This can stay fine, crackles, normal, because that's where he's at the moment. And that's what this scenario is specific to. Now with the Gen 2 patients, you know, I go crazy. I do all kinds of stuff with them. But but yeah, with Bjorn here, we use them a lot, and I really like them. It's also a good way to get the student like used to VR, right? It's kind
Mm-hmm.
of a new thing to them, and you know, it sort of helps them get used to it and not be so afraid, because Bjorn is not an overly complicated patient. Um, Bjorn is a critical thinking patient, and that's probably why I like him so much more. So
Mm-hmm.
interested in seeing how changing physiology data is included in the scenario. Um, Stephen, I assume that you mean how you can change the, all of his vitals and whatnot. And that you do that with the simulation manager there. So you just go to Bjorn, there's his vitals. And so you can see right now his blood pressure is 134/90. And if Jon changes this to, let's say they give him the nitro pill, and so it goes to like, 128, and let's do like 128/78 or somewhere around there. It doesn't have to be perfect spot on. There you go. Right. So now I can kind of do that on the fly. Right. Yeah. Yes. Then visualize the results. Exactly. Yeah. So now I can kind of do that on the fly. So, now, okay, the student put the new transdermal patch on. We expect maybe a little drop in blood pressure over time with that. But then also gives him his sublingual nitro. So we expect a little bit of drop in blood pressure with that. And it was funny because on one of our scenarios, the student gave the nitroglycerin, and then they gave a second dose, like very close to the first dose, and that wasn't called for in the scenario. And it wasn't the order either that was put in for the patient. And so the nursing instructor was sitting next to me, and she goes, "Hey, they just gave him 2 nitro pills. Why don't you drop the blood pressure a little bit more and make him dizzy?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay." So we just dropped the blood pressure a little more, made him dizzy. So
Awesome. I'm gonna post here this thing that I'm in. I for some reason I think I can only post to hosts and panelists. I don't know, Rick,
gotcha.
if you can, as host, if you can grab these and paste them
Yep,
in the
let's see if I
public
can do it.
channel.
Yep.
Excuse me, but this is basically the list of all the OpenRN scenarios. Let me close this. It's all here. So you can see all the scenarios that we were looking at in the commons are all here, and each of them has their own simulation plan. So I just clicked on nitroglycerin and that brought up this plan. And these are all the OpenRN sort of scenario plans, and it'll go through the overview. What are the learning objectives? What kind of curriculum does it align with? Now, OpenRN has open source nursing textbooks that are also available. And so these scenarios are designed to align with those open source textbooks as well. So that's what you'll see here. We've got a layout of the room, everything you're going to expect for medications, the different assets that are in the room, what the environment looks like. And of course, that's all set up already in the template. But then we have the different states. So this is state 1, and it can go through, it's a little bit of a description of Bjorn's situation. What are some of the prompts? What are some of the questions? What are some of the teaching points that you want to reinforce with the scenario? What are some of the expected student behaviors that you're looking for? And then it goes through the different states. And we've got debriefing questions that you can ask, and of course a survey, and then there's a rubric here at the end for evaluation, and then of course all the references that went into developing this scenario. So just as a matter of background, all of that is available as well.
And Kate, you asked, and you said first time guest, welcome, good to see you. Is this your backend user interface that say SimTech would be using to manipulate the scenario in real time?
Exactly.
Emphasis on the real time. Yes, but that one is only specific to Bjorn. So that one is a little bit more toned down because it's very specific to Bjorn and to that specific scenario, which is great for that specific scenario. If you are doing something, say, where things are going to be a little bit more complicated, maybe there's a few more things, a few more objectives that you want the student to go through. The Gen 2 patients, the Gen 2 patients are a little bit more set up for that. I think Millie is one of those.
Millie, yeah. Let's go to the head-to-toe assessment, Jon.
Yeah, good
Yeah.
call.
Millie's
So,
great. I love
yeah.
using.
Yeah, I had Millie as a congestive heart failure patient, and then right after that, I turned her into a stroke patient, like just for the next group that came in. And it was just, that was initially like, hey, we're just trying to try this out, show us some of the things that we can do. And so the first thing that I had Millie as was a congestive heart failure patient. Then I turned her into a stroke patient. And then what was the other thing that we did? I can't remember the other thing that we did with her. It was that day. I can't remember what the other anyway, we had those two definitely. And so now you can see Millie Simulation Manager is a little bit more advanced, and this is a little closer to what you're probably used to if you're using your you know, expensive mannequins, right? So you know, you can have her show the different types of lung sounds there, John. And this is all settable in real time. This is all you're doing this like just like you would with your simulation mannequins in the sim lab.
And you can set it up ahead of time,
Yep.
but some of the values you can also change in real time. So
Yep.
during the course of the simulation, the student might ask, could you stick out your tongue or whatever the case may be, and we can have them go through. So you can be
And you know,
puppeteering this in real time as well.
one of the things that I want to call out, guys, because we tend to forget about this all the time, is that, John, you're operating Acadicus right now in what we call non-VR mode. And so, you can have a mix of folks in non-VR and VR, still sharing the exact same experience, conditions, seeing the same thing, manipulating the same thing. And in fact, Bill, you can comment on this since you do a lot of teaching in here, but frequently it seems like once the scene and scenario is set up, you'll teach in non-VR mode while the students are in headsets.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And my instructors, they are usually they're in non-VR mode as well. They're in viewer mode just like this. Because what I'm really trying to do is just control what the patient is doing, not necessarily getting in there and helping the student do stuff. If I need to come in, say, as a provider or something like that, I can definitely do that. The other thing is that you can make some things visible and invisible when it comes to like I do a 12, I have them, they do a 12 lead ECG, right? And so the 12 lead's not going to show up until they actually put all the 12 leads on and all of that. And then I'm in VR and I just click it to be visible. But like with the vital signs that you're seeing here, it's a lot like your simulation mannequin where you'll take the SpO2, they'll put it on the mannequin's finger, and this one just recognizes that the SpO2 has been put on, and immediately the SpO2 is going to come up. Same thing with vital signs. When you put the blood pressure cuff on, the blood pressure shows up. You don't necessarily have to do that. John did that as sort of an override, and you can override it too. So you have that kind of capability. You can do either or, but you can set all of this in real time. And you can do all of this. I tell this story a lot, and I'm so sorry for those of you that have seen Simulation Pulse before. I tell this story a lot. I had a student who was working a cardiac arrest. The patient was in SVT, and he said, I'm going to give him 6 milligrams of atropine. And I said, 6 milligrams of atropine? And he said, yes, 6 milligrams of atropine. Well, what he meant to say was adenosine, right? Adenosine slows heart rate down, atropine speeds heart rate up. And so he gave the patient atropine because that's what he said. And I changed the vital signs to reflect that atropine had been given rather than adenosine, right? So if it was all preset for me, I wouldn't have been able to do that. But so I did that. I took the slider, moved the heart rate way up, and he went, whoa, 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 what's going on? What's going on? I don't understand, And so we stopped the scenario. We talked about what was going on. And he went, well, you knew what I meant. You knew I meant adenosine. And I said, I knew that. But you said atropine, and you said it twice. So that was one of the big benefits of being able to set it on the fly. Because if it's a preset scenario, there's an expectation that it's just going to be this, and that's all there is to it. So, but it's not. It's, I go in there and go, oh, heart rate went high,
Yep, absolutely.
I'm just going back and making sure I didn't miss any comments. Stephen, you said you arrived in Florida February 7th, 1961. That is awesome. You are pretty much a native at that point. My dad came from Connecticut down to Florida in 59. So interested. Okay, we didn't miss that one. Yes, and visualize the results. Okay. Are there known allergies input
There is. In fact,
Yeah,
it wasn't on that patient. I'm not sure which one of these scenarios has it, but I know one of maybe asthma level 2 does. I know you can configure the wristband to have known allergies. There's two different wristbands. There's one you can type in the name that you want on the wristband, and then one of them that's for allergies.
yep.
And you can actually socket that wristband, I think, on and off.
Request access to the chat. Is there limited access to the chat?
I'm seeing that too, Bill. I'm not quite sure what you mean, Kate.
That's interesting.
Because we're seeing your questions.
I've got you in the Q&A, but I think she means in the chat itself.
Oh, to drop a question direct. I see. Okay, let me look on that. Let me see if I can do something.
Yeah, because I think what's happening is sort of a ask and then not as much of a back and forth. So
Yeah.
Okay, Kate, I just sent you a chat. Let me know
You could
if you
also
see.
just add her to the as a
Well, and
panelist, even potentially, like it doesn't matter. We can.
it's over here.
well, let me just also say allow to talk.
Oh, does that work?
Makes it a little easier.
So, Kate, you should be able to unmute and speak if you'd like.
I've got that ability. I'm just a chatter, and I felt bad putting all of my comments in the Q&A.
No problem. No problem.
It still says chat disabled, but that's okay. Not a priority.
Yeah. Feel free if you have questions or whatever it may be, go for it.
Thanks, Al.
Yeah, and if anybody else wants to be promoted to allow chat and to speak, let me know and I'll add you to the list and have a conversation here. And it doesn't have to all be typed.
Yeah, well, and what's nice about this too, right? So I'm a paramedic by trade. I'm not a nurse, but I work with our nursing faculty and I work as the simulation tech essentially. And I have, enough of the knowledge of their scenarios. I've built some of them in here for them. So I have enough of knowledge of their scenarios that I can be the tech. I'm not the debriefer. That's up to the nursing faculty. So they'll watch the simulation. They'll be involved to the extent that they feel necessary. And they're in the room when the students are in there as well. We have an extended reality center that we utilize. And so they're joined in, they're watching, and then they do the debrief after that. So
You see that other
scenarios at NLP.
Oh,
natural language
no.
processing? Stephen, can you explain NLP for us, please? Stephen, I'm gonna add you so you
I feel
can
like I should know that.
Not NLN.
Stephen, you're on the list and can unmute if you'd like to speak.
One of the things I wanted to note while we're here in the comments is that some of these scenarios are designed to be facilitated and some are self-guided. So once we get the comments up and it's live, when you come in here, we're hoping to have more 3D recordings that sort of explain that. But some of them you go in and if you're a guest, you won't have access to the full simulation manager. So you can't really run the scenario. So people, I think sometimes are confused. They go in there and there's like nothing happens, but it's because you need to really unlock your menu and facilitate, but some of them are totally self-guided. So like the NG tube, wound treatment, Foley catheter, the EKG, those are self-guided scenarios that have a 3D recording. And also the childbirth one has a 3D recording of it as well from Kathy Sell, who's an OB expert over 30 years. And she did a 3D recording of the whole birthing sequence. So you can watch that in the birthing scenario.
And I see it now, natural language processing, student and patient converse. Um, well, I do that, so I act as the patient. So yeah,
Yeah, we don't really have anything in the way of AI or automated responses. We're a little bit unusual in that way. I think in our platform methodology, we're working with AI, we're experimenting with it. There's pilot projects that we're working on, but um, we're more like a little more cautious and taking some time to see, how it plays out. Like it's a little early to just let this completely be available to students to interact with a lot of the AI models, so we're sort of just looking at like where do you draw the line, how do you develop the prompts for the patient, in all different ways that AI can be useful in virtual simulation, but we don't have anything yet where the patient can actually interact. Our
yeah,
take
and I
is
think
still that, people have to learn how to communicate with live people. That's just the thing that we're doing that's a little different. Everybody else, there's like a lot of other sort of applications. If they don't have the natural language or voice recognition, they'll have like pop-up menus or bubbles they use to communicate with the patient. And, it's just those don't, when you interact with a patient in the real world, they're not AI. They're not, there's no bubbles in the room that you click on to communicate. You have to learn how to communicate with a real person. And that's what really simulation has been for decades, so we're trying to build tools to allow simulationists to do that in the virtual world.
yeah, and for us, for EMS, and it's very similar for nursing. For EMS, we want to count it as high fidelity simulation. So, we want to be able to use it for clinical contacts and those kind of things. And that has to be instructor led. So that's kind of why we at least at Madison College, we didn't necessarily look into something that was more of a standalone. Now, those were fine if we were going to give it to a patient or give it to a patient, give it to a student as a as like a homework or something like that. That was fine. I found the students got a little frustrated with it, but overall that was okay. But when we wanted to talk about, how are we going to use this for clinicals? Are we going to do clinical replacement with it? Because that's where we started. So we've been with the Madison College. We've been with Acadicus now going on 5 years, and where we sort of were looking at was during the pandemic, we were looking at it as a way to replace some of the clinicals that our students were losing. Uh, you know, every time our students would go to an ER, if the ER was even open, a respiratory patient would come in and they'd go, no, 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 this patient is going to isolation, and this is during pandemic, so it makes sense. This patient is going to isolation. We need the least amount of people going in there, so we don't want students going in and out. And so our students were losing respiratory used to be one of the high contacts, and then it was like woo, went way down. So that was sort of what we started looking at was, can we use this as a tool for replacement of some of those missing, clinicals? And we could, because it's high fidelity simulation. It's high fidelity, it's instructor led. So that's what we sort of focused on.
And I'll jump in here, John. You were just in the hazard ID room, and I was just doing some work with one of the members of our community who took that room and did a lot of customization to it, right? They wanted to add some other things. So they brought in, they teach a fall scale in there, and they brought that document in. They had 2 short video clips about fall hazards. We brought that into the hallway. They wanted the patient to have an O2 nasal cannula that was laying off across the bed and not on their face. And the O2 flow meter was set at the wrong rate for the patient. And an IV pump that was set at they want the student to check all these other things. And we were, had a great session, got in there, it took us about an hour, and we made all those edits, and they're ready to roll with their class now next week.
That's
Very
awesome.
Yeah, it's very cool.
And that kind of points to that Acadicus assist option too, in terms of like, a lot of schools just don't have the resources to hire, have a technician that's trained up on how to use all these tools. So we do have a services line called Acadicus Assist, and it's another way that you can sort of leverage your lab. If you want to, like Rick just described, is a perfect example of how that could work, and say we've got a pretty good scene that's close, but we want to rearrange some things, we want to add some new things, change it up. We can work with you to create that scene by editing the scene for you. And in many cases, we can do it in real time, just like we are now. If we were in a headset and you said, well, I like this scenario, but I want to be able to move this or that around and I want to change it to a different environment, we could do that literally over Zoom in real time and just change the things around and then save it into your lab so you're ready to go when it's time to run the sim. Boy, I got these in the wrong spot. How embarrassing.
The other thing was that we were looking for ways to use it in our lectures. So in theory classes and stuff to sort of, instead of having, let's just go over a PowerPoint or let's talk about a case study and we're sort of asking sometimes the students to visualize a case study, a patient that they don't necessarily have that ability to do because they haven't seen that many patients. We can do it. I mean, I've been a medic now for 27 years, so I can visualize plenty of patients, but this was a way to sort of, bring that visualization to my students, because then I could do that in my classroom. I had a laptop, so I could just go in my classroom and I could do a visualization of these patients. And we could talk about, all the possible scenarios and what the potential is and all of that. So I wound up doing this with the nursing students, and we did it actually using Zoom. We used WebEx, but same general idea. And I was in there acting as a new nurse who knew nothing, and they were sort of directing me on what do I need to do, what do I need to ask, why is it important to ask that, all those kind of things. And they explained to me how to do all of that. So they did all of the critical thinking, and it was the same case study that they were going to be using in class that day. We just did it in a little different way by using the Acadicus. And my very first lecture was just at the end of 2019. Cardiology is my specialty, on cardiac conduction, cardiac blood flow, and I had a big heart and all of that stuff, and I was explaining all that. So I wanted to use it in my lectures as well. I wanted to be able to use it, not just as a simulation tool, which is really powerful for it, but I wanted to be able to use it as a lecture tool as well.
Oh, finally got it.
You got it, John. There you go.
I'm like, we can't just leave this all inaccurate. So 4 minutes and 15 seconds in, we can see the PageWriter cart just fired up here. I get the big satisfactory kind of bring with the green arrow. Like, that feels great. And I'm an architect. How do I know how to do this? Spent too much time in Acadicus hanging around medical people, I think.
That's it.
If anybody needs any help getting their EKG set up,
yeah,
I'm your man. Well, we also have a 3D recording. Whoops, I'm sorry to be moving my camera. I get motion sick looking at other people do this. But we can press play. We'll see just a few seconds of what this. I've already done the activity, so Dr. Slayman is going to have.
So there was a question from Stephen. Do you have plans to create training scenarios for an OR environment? For example, proper patient preparation before the surgeon performs the specific surgery, not the surgery itself. John, you want to take that one?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Let me go. We don't have anything like that, but you could easily create something like that.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, John, because I think that's, we get these questions a lot, like, do you have something XYZ? And often, we may not, but the idea with Acadicus is, hey, let's put that together, right? I always describe Acadicus as this Lego box. right? Let's dump the Legos out. We have the environment, we have a surgical environment, we have surgical patients, we have surgical equipment. Now, what are your learning objectives? And what pieces do we need to bring into the scene to convey your learning objectives? And let's put that together.
Yeah.
If it wasn't already 12:40, I would say we could put the headset on and do it right now. Just come in
Yeah.
here in real time. Like, so we've got, excuse me, we've got an operating room that's set up with a basic, it's set up right now for endotracheal intubation. There's a 3D recording. I don't know if this one's Bill, but Bill does one of the endotracheal intubation recordings, but it's just set up with, you know, this patient and this configuration, but we can move all this stuff around. Like everything in here can be moved around and changed and adjusted. So we could have more sterile fields with more instruments, more equipment. We've got a whole content pack dedicated to medical instruments for surgical instruments. They're not interactive insofar as you can't like make incisions and things like that yet, but we do have a lot of content packs for
And you,
medical devices.
and you can move things around yourself. That's kind of the key is like, if I'm like, oh, you know what? I don't want that piece of equipment in there. I can select that piece of equipment and I can pull it out. I can just, just like I do in my sim lab. And then if I'm like, well, I like this ventilator better and I'd rather bring this ventilator in, you can bring that other ventilator in that's already there built in Acadicus. And so you can sort of pull things in and out. I think this is Dr. Slayman, but I did do an endotracheal intubation one. And we used this. So our students go to the OR, our paramedic students go to the OR to intubate patients. And that's how they get their required amount of live intubations. And so we actually used it to have one of our OR technology instructors. She came in and kind of gave us a familiarization of the OR environment. And the reason that she did it in here was because the day that we wanted to go over to their practice OR on campus, it was being used. And so I said, well, we can use this. Let's just, let's do this. And that's what we did. We brought the, we had her come in. I went in and, manipulated stuff, and she was just showing me what's what and where things go. And then the students got to kind of actually go into the headset and feel what it's like to stand in an OR. So.
Yeah. And there's
And
like
they can even intubate the
opportunities.
patient.
What's that? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And there's opportunities for collaboration because like GE Healthcare gave us the models. They sponsored inclusion of their anesthesia devices to be in here. So we've got like this device is like down to the millimeter. Every little screw and nut and bolt on here is exactly like this particular machine is. And then we had a different school that we were working with sponsor development of the operating room itself. The endotracheal patient was sponsored by NSU. There's probably 5 or 6 different collaborations in this room alone. And then we'll be talking to some school, like I was just talking to, well, was it a while ago, Villanova was interested in the possibility of sponsoring connection between the anesthesia device and a patient and going through the step-by-steps of the actual device interaction, which right now it's just it's a model that doesn't have any interactivity, but those are the kinds of collaborations we look for. It's like individual organizations that bring that expertise that want to build a simulation around that objective. We can work with them to create that at a very good value relative to what you would pay to develop that as a custom VR application.
And John, in fact, I think we're in the process of working with an organization right now on a trauma OR patient, correct?
Yes, we are. Yeah. Yes.
I think that's getting close, actually.
It is. Yep. We've got the trauma bay, the emergency room, the 4 bay. Yeah, a lot of different. And then like, one of the schools, Dr. Morris at University of Maryland is working with us on stroke victim training in the trauma unit. So we'll have, some of the Gen 2 patients have a lot of the stroke victim functionality, which is being guided by Dr. Morris and his team at the University of Maryland. The other thing we didn't talk about in terms of how do you get this all working, we talked about you need a lab. We have a new campus model that's coming. We haven't really announced that formally yet, but we've been talking about it loosely. It's basically a bundle of 6 labs that you get for the price of 5, really for $100,000 per year. So some of the schools that are starting to expand, excuse me, or they have remote regional campuses, they can benefit from having multiple labs. But hardware is always a big question. And so one of the ways that we're looking to, excuse me, to help solve that is a partnership with Reboot Imagine, is a third-party vendor that we're working with to provide hardware solutions. So really, it's super easy to spin up a VR lab in terms of, they can provide all the hardware, everything is pre-configured. We were just talking yesterday about an offering they have where you can basically you get the kit, shows up in the mail, you open up the laptop, you put on the headset, and it's automatically just everything works. It loads up Acadicus, gets you right into the demo lab. It has AirLink worked out with the Quest 3, so you put on the headset, it's already wireless. There's no tethering, no computer, no link cable or anything. It's just automatically air tethered to the PC, and away you go.
That was
So
very exciting.
yeah, very, very cool. It just reduces all the friction. So like getting this up and running and working is all very, very, it's getting easier and easier every day. I remember when I first started building this stuff like 8 years ago, having to roll a whole cart full of equipment in to do a simple demo. And now it's all pretty turnkey, a lot easier than it's ever been. So you've got your hardware, you've got your lab, you've got a Catechus Assist if you need help with anything. That's basically the how it works of a catechus. And that completes the month of February. Essentially, we covered all of the basics of what's all in there. March is going to be all about nursing. Nursing, nursing, nursing. It's going to be primarily focused around the OpenRN project, which has obviously been a huge collaboration for us that we're really excited about. We're going to be doing a victory lap on the completion of all those scenarios. We're going to be hearing more from Mitch Luker and Jamie Howell from Western Technical College. And haven't talked to Bill yet, so I can't promise anything, but I want to see if Madison College wants to participate in the nursing month, and depending on what we put together.
I'm sure we will be there.
I'm sure you will too. So
We
it's
usually
kind of,
are.
yep, exactly. So we have a new video, a really awesome new video that we just produced that it puts a spotlight on the critical shortage of nurses that we have, clinicians in general, but nurses in particular with this video. We're hearing, from our perspective, we're meeting with schools all over the country that are, really, they're facing tremendous challenges. It's becoming very, very serious, and a lot of the clinical sites are understaffed. And we just had two hospitals and 19 clinical sites in Western Wisconsin closed down literally overnight. They noted, like, it was just suddenly they announced they're going to be closing down. And so we're trying to put a spotlight on tools and resources that can help solve these shortages. And so OpenRN is, again, open source textbooks, open virtual scenarios that are OER that you can modify and edit and create whatever you want. So we're going to be really talking a lot about that throughout the month of March. We're going to try to do a live simulation during a Pulse Live toward the end of the month. We want to do a live event. So we're going to see, I'd like to see if we can get it to be a multi-school live event. I don't want to be a little bit too
That'd be
ambitious to be careful, with my ambitions there, but I can't see any reason why we couldn't do that, to have multiple sites involved. I haven't confirmed this yet, but Mitch Luker and Jamie Howell gave a co-presented at IMSH on their use of VR with the OpenRN project, and I've asked if they would be a guest on the Pulse Live the third week of March, so that they can give that presentation and share that with everybody here as well. So I haven't heard any objections. We haven't locked in the date for sure yet. I'm just kind of throwing that out there. So stay tuned throughout the month of March. We're going to be doing all kinds of nursing stuff. Does anybody have any questions? Anything you want to see in the platform, any content you're interested in, any success stories, any simulations you've run, or you're working on building a new lab, and anything you're excited about that's coming up? Any hot takes on Vision Pro? That's kind of past now, I guess. Is it past or is it just getting started? My take on Vision Pro is this. It's amazing, and it's named perfectly. It's Vision. That's all it really is, right? It's not Interactivity Pro, it's Vision Pro. And I think it does a really, really good job of vision. It's like it's like a big monitor for your MacBook, or it's like having a display. It's really about a display that can at times sort of like encapsulate. It can be panoramic, parts of it can stick out and be 3D, but it's really like a display. And what you don't see in any other promotions is like it's all people sitting alone on their couches. Like it's not people working together. And one of the things that we're really emphasizing with Acadicus, especially in the training space, is the ability to pick things up. If you want to like intubate that patient or you want to resuscitate that neonate, you have to be able to do certain things interactivity wise, and the amount of their interaction is essentially pinch to zoom, make the screen bigger. That's the main interaction, is selecting and pinching, but you can't like pick things up and do things. So I think Apple's are going to be all over that. They're going to, of course, have headsets and interactivity in the future, but it's Vision Pro. It's all about vision. My last thought on it is that everybody has to have a custom lens insert. So in terms of higher ed that we're looking at, like Madison College, Western Technical, Northeast Wisconsin Technical, any of these schools that are using it, if you wanted to use that in higher ed, you'd have to have like a machine shop in the back that's grinding out lenses and be custom lens, because everybody that has prescription glasses have to have prescription inserts. So you can't do the way we do with Quest 3 or Quest 2 or any of the headsets that we work with it and just have students going through it, because they'd all have to have custom inserts made. So that's my hot take on Vision Pro. What do you guys
Yeah,
think?
we're not into it yet. Somebody asked me the other day, somebody came into the center and said, are you going to be getting, the Vision Pro? Or are you going to, doing any of the Apple stuff? And I mean, I speak both languages, so I'm both Mac and PC capable, but I just wasn't really well, and for the price point too, like the amount that it is and what you really get out of it. I mean, if you're a dedicated Mac person, you want it. You want it because you love everything that Mac puts out. And I have an iPhone and all of that. I'm pretty well Mac inclined, but I wasn't clamoring for it initially. I want more interactivity. I think what we have right now, especially with when we're doing our like Spanish class and stuff like that, that's all meta. That's all on the Quest 2s. And it works out great. I mean, the hand tracking on it actually is pretty good if they want to use hand tracking. But yeah, it's that interactivity that's not quite there. So
I think it's smart move for them.
oh yeah.
Like they're starting with what they know. Like you say, the Apple enthusiasts are going to be all over it. They get them in there using it. They're building some apps for it. They're getting a start, and then they're just gradually landing and expanding, I think, starting with vision. So I think
Yep.
it's really smart where they're at. I'm not counting them out. A lot of people are like, oh, the first version, it's flopping and no, I don't see it like that. I think it's working exactly as they wanted it to, and they're just going to keep getting better from here. This is like, it's hard to imagine it because it's such a new and shiny new thing, but you have to remember that this is like going to be the worst one that they release. Like what you're seeing now is like literally going to be the worst ever Apple headset because it's the very first version. And if you look at the iterations that they're going to be coming out with every few years, it's just going to get better and better and better. Same with the VR headset, same with Quest. It's just we're currently using the worst versions. They just keep getting better, lighter weight, lower cost, higher resolution, better hand tracking, everything across the board.
Yeah, we're going in for Quest linking too. You mentioned that earlier. One of the things we're sort of because I have 12, well, 13 stations that our students would be at, it was a lot easier to either use just the cable and be done with that, or really the best is they have a D-Link that creates its own Wi-Fi, and then it's a lockdown Wi-Fi, and it's only for that one headset. That was really helpful. So we've been using that. We've been using the D-Link, and that's sort of what I'm testing out more. What I like about it then is that you have a little lighter headset and you have that wireless capability. That does make a difference. We haven't, knocking on wood, had any issues with the wires. It hasn't been a problem. We have a 3D art class where, and I swear they're spinning around and doing all kinds of stuff that happens every Tuesday night. And you'd expect like somebody's gonna get wrapped up in that. They don't. You can feel it, you know where it's at, you realize that your wire's there, that kind of stuff. They don't really get wrapped up in it. Again, knock on wood, but we even looked at like pulley systems and stuff, and it just wasn't the thing. But that D-Link, that ability to now link it directly to the computer on its own dedicated Wi-Fi, that was game changer. So
Yeah, it's awesome.
yeah, so that's worked out really well, and that's sort of where we're moving forward too. So
yeah, I think that's the way of the future for sure. It is very difficult to do true standalone, even if you're doing a standalone application without being tethered, because by the time you run one scenario or two, now the battery's dying. So you got to plug. They're almost all tethered. Every time you see a VR lab that's running standalone headsets, they got to plug them in because they run out of batteries unless you have enough to be charging while one group is in. But then you got double the headsets, and yeah, they tend to need to be tethered for battery power, unless you have other accessories.
Yep. No, it's very true. It's very true. We are lucky in that situation where we can do that. We can have, swap out the headset, put a new headset in. But no, not everybody can do that. And yeah, you wind up tethering a lot, so.
Yep.
And it's not as
Absolutely.
bad. Early on I heard people, oh, tethered and it's connected. Like, it's not that bad. It really isn't.
It's really not.
Yeah, you get like a 15-foot cord or something like that, and you
Yeah.
don't even really know it's there.
No.
And
Once you're
and once
immersed in the scenario, you forget all about it.
and once people learn like how to teleport and turn their head and stuff like that, I mean, I did this. I was doing scenarios with my students, and I was at home because it was pandemic time, but my foot was broken. I was sitting in this chair right here. It's got the footrest that comes out. I've got my foot up. I'm sitting in this chair. I was in this office, and I'm just moving around in VR, and I'm not like really going anywhere. I was teleporting and all of that. It was right. It was great. It was really easy.
Yep, absolutely. Well, as we're getting to the top of the hour, I just want to share my email address is I guess you could just use info@acadicus.com, info@acadicus.com. If anybody has any questions or suggestions for how we can make this better, that's what we're really after. This is a very informal thing, and we're just learning. We've only done this a few times. We're going to keep doing it every Friday at noon Central. So any ideas at all on how we can make this more effective, more efficient use of your time? Really appreciate everybody coming today. This is great to see people starting to join us. And if you want to see more content, you want more in-world editing scenes, what can we do? Anything you want, Acadicus is a huge world, and we're like the camera crew. Like, we get to go around and put a spotlight on all the interesting things that are happening in that world. And that's really what the Pulse is all about. It's just going out and going into that world and showing you some of the cool things that are happening. So
We really appreciate you taking time on your Friday today to join us.
and I'll have videos of past Pulse Lives are up. There's 2 of them that are up. There's one more coming from last week. We'll be getting this one up. And cool. Yeah, so there's that. And then if you go to our website, the Pulse Live has a lot of past interviews with if you want to see Bill's, the new XR Center at Madison College, Bill was a guest, and you can watch that episode.
Oh, there's a
Um,
lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and the sim lab up in NWTC is pretty amazing. You can see Mitch giving a tour of that. So we've got different ways that you can see how other people are using Acadicus for stuff. So, all right. Well, we are at the top of the hour. Thanks, everybody. Happy Friday. Have a great weekend.
Nice
We'll
to
see
see
you-
everybody and meet
See you next
everybody.
Friday. Cheers.
Steven,
everyone.
go Gators. Take care.